If more than 80% of our work is cross-functional and AI is going to fundamentally change the way we work, how is AI going to change cross-functional work? Hi, I'm Courtney Baker, and this is AI Know-How from Knownwell, helping you reimagine your business in the AI era. As always, I'm joined by Knownwell CEO David DeWolf, Chief Product Officer Mohan and Chief Strategy Officer Pete Buer. We also have a discussion with Robert Brill of Brill Media about how his organization has tapped into the power of AI and how you can too. But first, the news. Pete Buer joins us as always to break down some of the latest AI headlines and how they apply to your business. Hey, Pete, how are you?
I'm good, Courtney. How are you doing?
Doing good. For our first story this week, I wanted to dig into a story from the Wall Street Journal. The headline is AI talent in demand as other tech job listings decline. Pete, what's the takeaway here?
Well, Courtney, this picks up on themes that we've touched on recently in a couple articles. In particular, I'm remembering back to the outcomes from Davos, where there was some discussion about a coming war for talent. Maybe we're starting to see early indications that it is upon us. What we're seeing is that in the talent market for AI-related roles, competition is heating up. In the article, there's lots of good data, and you should go in and have a look. But basically, three big takeaways, sort of massively oversimplified. Number one, AI-related roles in the workforce overall proportionally are up substantially from their low point in December of 2022, while other IT-related roles are substantially down by about a third across that same period. Number two, new job listings for AI-related roles are similarly up across recent history, while other IT role listings are down. And lastly, when AI is present as a required skill of a role, think engineer, data analyst, software developer, it pays better and sometimes substantially so than when AI is missing from the role. So the takeaway is pretty straightforward. All the old war for talent rules apply. Companies are going to need to sharpen their strategies on AI-related roles, looking at everything from reskilling of existing staff to sourcing and recruiting new ones, to rethinking their mix of employee versus contractor, and through to doubling down on retention and engagement all across the board in every one of these flavors. Companies that don't get it right will pay the cost in the form of subpar product being produced by subpar talent or projects languishing in the queue because of a lack of butts in seat.
You know, Pete, in this moment, I'm curious your thoughts on, as someone who's had a career in HR and really understands what needs to happen in an organization in that area. When it comes to these roles where the salary range, could be kind of volatile, how do you figure out what is the right pay range for these roles? Because you want to attract that talent.
Well, it's a multi-contoured question, right? The job offer to anyone in any role is a combination of, yes, salary, but also bonus and benefits and the quality of manager and quality of coworker, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So you have to look at the full picture. But as to the comp input, benchmarking is your friend. Call your 10 CEO book club friends and find out what they're paying for these roles, and listen closely to your recruiting team to understand where they're losing people due to salary and where they're winning, and get to the place where you can pay a fair amount that works both externally and, by the way, internally, and also provide the rest of the aspects of a compelling career to someone such that they would want to be part of the organization and stay.
That's super helpful. All right, next up, let's unpack a Bloomberg article headlined JPMorgan's AI-aided cash flow model can cut manual work by 90%. Pete, what can business leaders glean from this?
For me, I can keep this one short and sweet because what this stands for is something I refer to now as the AI transformation two-step. Step one, create a solution that dramatically decreases the amount of manual work your people need to do to execute on a task, creates value internally. 90% reduction is crazy good, and so that's a wonderful target. If you can accomplish that, all the better. Second, having then proven out the concept, turn that same solution into a paid service that customers can use directly. Take the significant benefit enjoyed internally and use it to create value and generate new revenue streams externally. That's the formula. Do it anywhere and everywhere you can across the business.
Perfect. I love it. Thank you, Pete, as always.
Thank you.
In previous episodes, David has dropped a stat that I originally honestly found hard to believe. And it is that up to 80% of the time we spend at work is spent on cross-functional collaboration. I've been really interested to dive into where that percentage comes from and how it might change in the age of AI. I am excited to talk to you today about something I'm pretty passionate about because I think I've spent most of my career really engaged in this topic, and that is cross-functional work. Now, when you think of AI, especially right now, that may not be the most obvious use case. Right now it's mainly individual execution level. There might be a few things that are coming out that impact our cross-functional work, but I want to get your take on how you envision cross-functional work changing as AI continues to develop and we have new tools. Now, before we get into that, I do want to give a little stat. And David, this is actually a stat that I heard you share at an event you were speaking at.
Oh, okay.
And you said that 80% of the work we do is collaborative in nature. And on first glance, honestly, that sounds kind of high. It's 80%. Yeah. But when you think of phone calls, Slack messages, of course, email, meetings, honestly, you can make an argument that that number might even feel low. So when we're talking about cross-functional work, we're talking about all of those together. So I want to just throw this out to you too. How do you see AI changing our cross-functional work?
Yeah, I think that stat, it comes from research that really looked into the average knowledge worker on a week-by-week basis. What percentage of their time do they actually spend performing the actual work of their job, right? Specific execution versus in all of the other areas of business, meetings, reporting, cross-functional collaboration, communication, right? All of those types of things. And it is shocking to see 80%, but then you stop and think about it. And doesn't it match the anecdote, right? Doesn't it match exactly what people complain about organizations, how they get lost in the bureaucracy and they can't actually get their work done and they're caught up in too many meetings and all these things. And it's just the brutal reality of how we turn individual efforts into the outcomes that drive our businesses. And I think, as you said, the more you think about that, the more you realize, wow, a big part of our labor is actually figuring out how to work together. And when I start to think about the debates we have in those meetings, the reporting that we do, the effort that we take to collect information and data and having to pour through insights to figure out what the actual meaning of this data that we're looking at is. Those types of things, I think there's a whole lot of it that we can automate, that this new artificial intelligence that we're now democratizing and everybody has the access to can take and really elevate the work that we do to allow us to do more of what only humans can do. And I think exploring that is an interesting topic.
Yeah, I think I come to the same conclusion, but in a different way. When you think of collaboration, you think of it as something warm, fuzzy, you're kind of inventing something together. But you just have to ask yourself, how much of this is forced collaboration versus true collaboration, right? So there is siloing in a company, right? So not just for knowledge, even for basic information. So you've got to pull finance into the meeting. You got to pull proposal development into the meeting. You got to have account management in the meeting. You got to have solution development portion of engineering into the meeting, so on and so forth. That makes it sound like everybody's collaborating together. But this is really because of the lack of infrastructure in a company to truly collaborate on what matters. So just imagine a future world where there is an AI system where not just search within an enterprise, but the knowledge is properly organized and at the fingertips of anybody working. And this is then it makes it possible to collaborate even at a more higher level than at the basic scraps collaboration that we normally do. So it's 80% because we are forced to be 80%, but in a future world, it can be a true effective collaboration that can be less than 80%, but even more effective.
I love that concept of knowledge management. I think we've said before on this podcast that knowledge management is one of the areas that we envision being totally revamped. And it comes back to that point you're making that people have to sit in the meeting just because we don't know who knows what and how to tap into that knowledge base. How many meetings do we sit into as you're describing that I'm thinking of, the individual in the corner that's obviously distracted and answering emails. And, sometimes you hold them accountable because they need to be engaged. Sometimes you're just like, yeah, I don't know if they really need to be here. Right. And I think in larger organizations, that type of thing happens all the time. And is the type of real pain point that we should be seeking to solve and to relieve with the technology that we now have.
And especially in knowledge work, we all know that when there are fewer handoffs, that is a more efficient organization. That's a more effective organization. So an underlying technology that where everybody has access to not just information, but knowledge, and then be able to work with that and be able to reimagine work, I think is truly powerful in the future as we reorganize enterprises around this key technology.
I think that's a key word, reorganize. One of the things that I think will be interesting to see play out is we still live in a very kind of manufacturing, factory-oriented business environment where hierarchy rules the day, right? And I think you see in the highest performing organizations the breaking down of those silos so that people can truly work cross-functionally in a very collaborative way without the hierarchy, without the silos, without, those walls that get in the way of producing the best results. And if we can get rid of those silos with great knowledge management, with, intelligence that is telling us, oh, warning, be careful of this, like proactively, somebody else in the organization is working on X, Y, and Z. What will it do to how we structure our work environments? I think it could revolutionize, typical, quote, management science and practices.
What I've heard you say so far is that you're really envisioning a new structure for how knowledge is shared throughout an organization and how that impacts our cross-functional work. Are there any other items like that you think will come into play that really impact our cross-functional work? Let's lay those out. And then I'd love to ask you too, how you would advise executives to start planning for things like that coming online here probably way sooner than we anticipate. I think we think of technology moving kind of slowly. I don't think that's going to be the case with AI. So can you answer those two questions?
One of the things I think is interesting to think about as it intersects with this idea of organization and flatter organization structures, you think about some of the new ways we're engaging people in this gig economy, for example, right? We see a trend towards more and more contractors and independent workers working and fulfilling kind of the gig economy, right? Does that intersect with the way we can work in order to facilitate a new working model? And what does that do to org structures, right? I think it was a few weeks ago that one of the thought leaders, I don't remember who it was, came out and said, in the next few years, there will be $1 billion organization that has one person in it. And I think it was Sam Altman, if I'm not mistaken, said that at Davos or something. I think that type of thing is possible because of not only the artificial intelligence, but also where our economy is at in terms of collaboration with individuals that aren't necessarily within the same four walls of employment.
I think there are two places that people can start. One is around getting the basics. And we've talked about this, Courtney and David, a lot in this podcast before, around getting the AI journey started on the technical side of things, like cataloging the use cases, cataloging the data you have, cataloging the key technologies that you may need to procure or build. That's on one side of things. The other side is really start to reimagine the work and the organizational design and the people aspects of it. So I think those are two good starting points, I think, Courtney, to your question.
One of the things, as you say, the people aspects, Mohan, that really comes to mind is I think historically, especially smaller companies, kind of the SMBs, the middle market, if you're not an enterprise, you don't tend to have very strong people operations. It's just one of those luxuries you can't afford. I do think that with the advent of artificial intelligence, two things are going to happen. Number one, people are going to become even more important, right? Eventually, artificial intelligence will be commoditized. It will be another technology that everybody has access to. What will be unique is the humans within the enterprise and how we create an environment and a culture that allows them to do what only humans can do. And in that world, I think people operations and HR and really mature talent practices that take advantage of these latest trends and really value the human person will become even more important. And they will be democratized by the AI itself and allow these middle market companies to have access to them. I think that'll be a really interesting evolution. And it's something that I think firms should have on their radar to be looking out for. These areas you haven't been able to focus on historically are areas you will be able to, and you really should, because it is the last differentiator.
Absolutely true. I think that and getting to a point of true collaboration, because you've been able to do some deep work and bring that to the table and collaborate further, I think would be a goal that we can all look forward to.
Courtney, I want to turn this around, though, and I want to ask you the question, because you started off the podcast saying you've lived in this space for so long. What's your perspective on how work is going to change and this cross-functional collaboration is going to evolve? Because you've sat at that intersection for so long.
Yeah, it's funny in marketing. I always joke that marketing is a group project. If you didn't like doing group projects in school, don't go into marketing, okay? Of course, there are certain roles that are more individual, but you just think about anything that you produce, it went through many hands, sometimes together collectively to produce. I continue to think about this in the intersection of remote work and how those two things go together. And I do think there's kind of this, as we get further in kind of at a larger scale of people working 100% remote, and, the strain that has on cross-functional work, it's not the same. It's different. And so I keep thinking about, okay, how can AI be used to help in that? Does it actually propel remote work in a new way that we haven't thought of? And I think some of the things y'all have already hit on kind of could be that things that accelerate it. And remote work, we would all say it certainly has its pros and it has cons, but are there some of those cons that it can help us overcome and actually make, again, especially in areas like marketing where it is so, collaborative in nature, what you produce, a lot of times very creative work that comes together with multiple people touching, even more fun, more creative, better, even having the connection with your teammates, contractors that you work with to produce the most excellent work. So that's kind of where my thoughts have been when it comes to this.
What I love about you layering that on is I think true disruption, like not incremental disruption, but the true disruption comes from a confluence of multiple driving forces. And typically we think of disruption from the perspective of technology. It came and introduced something and it changed everything. It rarely happens that way, right? Typically new business models, very new ideas come from all of these different factors. And I think if you take the artificial intelligence and you intersect it with the gig economy, and then you layer on top of it this remote work trend, you start to get all of these confluences come together where there is a real need for change. And I love to look at this remote work thing as we've been talking about remote or in office or hybrid. That whole perspective is old school. There will be something new that we don't even know how to describe yet that is the future. And I think it comes from this confluence and all these pain points coming together where some genius someday is going to have this realization, or probably more likely, multiple organizations are going to start solving the problem in different ways, and it will all come together to be an aha moment where we look back and say, oh, this is how it's changed. We now call it X.
Yeah.
Fascinating, Courtney. I'm looking forward to the day when I can send my AI assistant to boring meetings and then just be at the real ones.
So you'll be at all my meetings. Is that what you're saying, Mohan? Yeah.
Absolutely. Of course.
I ask this question of you two often because I think as there's so much still to come and so much dreaming and thinking of what the future will be, you know, I always want to make it practical for people listening. Can you two give kind of a quick hitter on how do you start preparing for this now?
I think it's, again, cataloging what you have and see you can build a knowledge management framework in the company, because knowledge management is truly, truly important. That is the scaling sauce. And I think for the first time ever, we'll be able to create better knowledge structures than ever before.
I agree. Practically with your AI, it is in the knowledge management space, no doubt about it. Number two, I will say start focusing on your culture, on your HR, on your people operations, and how do you engage people in this world. And then number two, I'd say charge forward, don't look back. I'm continually shocked by the organizations that are forcing their people back into the office, and they can't realize that we live in a new world, and I think they're missing out. And if you're going backwards, you're going to get caught.
Yeah.
Charge forward, not only with the technology, but the very pragmatic ways that the world is evolving.
Well said. Thank you two, as always.
Thank you.
Thanks, Courtney.
We recently published a white paper on AI transformation readiness. Want to find out if your organization is ready to transform with the help of AI? Click the link in our show notes or the YouTube description to download the paper today. Robert Brill joined Pete Buer recently to talk about some of the ways his company, Brill Media, is riding the AI wave. Hear how his media buying company is already seeing cross-functional work change thanks to AI.
Robert, welcome. It's so great to have you on the podcast.
Thanks, Pete, for having me. Appreciate it.
If we could, can we share a little bit of context about yourself and the business with listeners just to get ourselves rolling?
Yeah, spent 20 years in advertising. My company is Brill Media. For the last 10 years, I bootstrapped it, and we're doing many millions in revenue, running advertising campaigns, primarily for agencies as a white label outsource ad buying team, and for businesses direct.
Awesome. Thank you. And I was cruising through the website and caught a blog and pulled from it the language of AI will continue to rock the world. And as you know, our focus is, of course, on AI and how it's rocking the world. I was hoping maybe you could share a little bit of innovation in your business, ways that you're leveraging AI to drive growth.
Yeah, I think the most direct way is we created a chat agent inside ChatGPT that is a copywriting bot. So for context, most of our business is ad buying. It's numbers, it's Excel documents, it's algorithms, that type of thing. So copywriting we do, or ad creative development that we do, is supplementary, and most of our clients have big, well-known creative firms that do their ads. But for smaller businesses that don't, we provide those services. So it's complementary to our work. And this creative, this AI bot that we've created does the following. We've programmed it to understand the best and brightest of copywriting frameworks. That's number one. Number two, it knows the ad specs for ad copy across the major platforms: Google, Meta, LinkedIn, TikTok, banners, etc. And then you can ask it, any user can ask it to scrape a website to understand how a business is working, is talking about itself. And what we do with that is we answer a series of questions that the bot has been programmed to ask, and then it outputs ad creative for us. And so it does that this whole process probably takes maybe 20 minutes. So it's a lot faster than hiring a copywriter. Certainly we're able to keep 100% of the revenue that comes in. And so as a result, we're able to pass along the lower costs to our clients. And so the process is, instead of taking a few days or a week or two to develop ad copy, we do it within an hour or two. We develop far more ad variations. We curate, and then we go to the client and say, here's some options for you. And the reason this method is important is because our philosophy is, as long as you have a minimum level of quality on the ad creative, that's going to be, and then you just need volume. And having the volume is going to be important there. So I'll stop there, but we can.
No, that's interesting. I was going to ask the quality question. So you get a lot more variations, but they are of sufficient quality that you're able to pass them along and make decisions from them?
Yeah, it still requires human oversight. I mean, theoretically, you could do it without human oversight. I just wouldn't recommend that. So when you think about the algorithms on advertising, they are becoming further like black boxes. Like in the old world of advertising on like Meta, for example, you have keywords and interests, lookalikes, and retargeting audiences. Now it's just broad: age, gender, and location. And you want to constantly test new headlines, new primary text, and new images or video. So with the bot, it's able to create far more volume, which then gets curated internally, gets then approved by the client, then gets pushed out to the algorithm, and that will then further curate through a control and variable test. So the benefit here is you really have the ability to work with the algorithms to feed the algorithms with information that ultimately helps businesses grow.
Is there stuff on the horizon where you're dabbling and there's something cool to come?
It's so easy. Like, it's literally just buying a subscription to Grammarly. Grammarly has AI integrated in it. And man, it's helping our report writers do very well. Here's kind of the challenge, right? You have people who are numbers people, and the numbers people it's really important to get the numbers right. So they get the numbers right. But then like grammar needs to be formatted. And, like they make silly mistakes, because I've been there too. It's like I forget to add the comma to the 4-digit number in the thousands, right? Because I'm worried about getting the numbers right. And then I look dumb because I'm like, there's no comma there, or there's it's the wrong place, because I'm really focused on the numbers. So really, the Grammarly helps us catch all the like obvious things that we're not thinking about as much. So now the reality is we have internal review. We have very senior people going up even to our directors and COO who's reviewing reports. But I don't want them to review reports. I want them to do other more meaningful tasks. So we're instituting Grammarly for this, and so it's already helping a lot.
The overarching theme of this particular episode is how AI will change cross-functional work.
Yeah.
We sort of think about the evolution of AI use in the business from a hierarchical perspective almost. There's robotics for getting manual work done at the sort of front line. Then there's individual knowledge work, automation. Yeah. And it starts getting interesting and touching many lives at the same time within the business when you get into cross-functional operational work. Are you seeing applications reach this level of the business, this level of impact?
I think bigger businesses than ours are probably doing this. I mean, I think there's a use case for having AI look at dramatically large loads of data and making decisions about it. That to me is very expensive and probably requires a fair bit of engineering expertise. But the beauty of AI is that it's dramatically improving every year. Like all of us are in decline, and the AI is becoming better every year.
Are your customers looking for AI in your services? Is that part of the buying process to see how clever a supplier is?
I haven't specifically, but it's weird. We get clients off of relationships, and we run leads. We run ads to generate leads, and those people are like, okay, we're ready to work with you. What people want from us is the human expertise to understand how to use technology in general. Like Michio Kaku, right? He's a theoretical physicist. He talks about different types of civilizations, and he talks about, our future, and this was a few years ago, and I think our present is humans will be the tenders of machines. Machines will do the heavy lifting. We'll just be making sure they don't go off the rails. And that's already what we're doing with ad buying. I mean, Meta has the absolute best advertising algorithm in the marketplace, has 10 or 20 years of data on most of us. And all our job is to make sure that Meta is giving us what we need while also giving it what it needs, which is, a whole bunch of different consumer behavioral benefits to the ads.
Thank you, Robert. It's been awesome. It's a pleasure to meet you, and thanks for sharing your insights.
Thanks, Pete. Appreciate it.
Thanks again, as always, for listening and watching. Don't forget to leave us a review. We really appreciate it. And if you can share it with someone else, we would love that too. At the end of every episode, we like to get one of our AI friends to weigh in on the episode topic. So today, hey Claude, how are ya? Heard you got an upgrade. This episode, we're talking about how AI will change cross-functional work. So what do you think?
You're right, I did get some upgrades recently. As AI continues to advance, I think we'll see it enabling much tighter collaboration and integration across different teams and functions within organizations. With AI handling more mundane tasks, workers will be freed up to focus on higher-level strategy and cross-functional initiatives.
And now you're in the know. Thanks as always for listening or watching. We'll be back next week with more roundtable discussions, headlines, and interviews with AI experts.